You know, there are people who think financial freedom means no longer having to worry about your money. I will tell you, we take care of a lot of people with a lot of money, and if you think they didn't worry about it before they hired us, you're making a mistake. There are many things to consider inside of your financial plan, whether you have money or whether you don't have money. Things like taxes and estate planning and how the distributions are going to work, gifting that you're going to do to your children or your charity. There's many complexities. We're going to talk about what real financial freedom is on this segment today. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Dean Huddleson.
Happy to have you along, Dean. Hey, buddy, we are celebrating at the time of the original airing of the show what we call Independence Day.
Absolutely.
We're celebrating the Declaration of the Declaration of Independence. And Dean co-authored the article that goes out this week. If you've never seen our newspaper column, all you have to do is go to our website, yourlifeafterwork.com, get signed up for the Market Carver, Elements in Focus, and our weekly news column that comes out. Dean helped to do the one this week where we talked about financial independence and the Declaration of Independence. And, I knew only one person signed it on July 4th. I didn't know that it took months for the rest of them to be accumulated.
All the way through November of that year.
Very, very good history that was inside of that article. So we're going to talk about what financial freedom is. So the big words that some people use in our industry are fiduciary versus suitability. So tell me what those two terms are, Dean.
You know, before I came to the Financial Enhancement Group, I had no clue what fiduciary was. And you taught me, as everyone should know, being a fiduciary means I have to treat your money like it's my money if I'm in your same situation. We have a legal responsibility to do that. If I'm a suitability individual, a broker, then I make recommendations. They may not actually just have your best interest in mind at all times, but that's the standard they live by.
So here's something that I'm going to poke at you. When we look at the Financial Enhancement Group, there's 34 people on the team right now. And there are only two that were ever hired that didn't have a character check involved. Right?
Yeah.
Adam called out of the Yellow Pages to do his internship his junior year at IU, 20 some years ago. He's my largest partner, shareholder of the company, second largest shareholder, and our chief investment officer, and a CFA, and a good one at that. And a new young man that we just hired that came to us from Schwab, right. Jonathan, and happy to have him. Those are the only two that I didn't have the ability to do a background check on the way that I like background checks. Everybody else, including you, you're actually a cousin to one of my CPA partners up in the Lafayette area at Huth Thompson, and fully vouched for you and everything else. But I think this is an important conversation for fiduciary and suitability. I don't believe that there was ever a point in time in life when you, Dean Huddleston, would have intentionally done anything wrong, regardless of the license requirement.
You weren't correct about that.
Okay. I would, betting your soul is a dangerous thing to do. So I'm not going to go there, but I would bet a lot of money that you would not have done that. Now, the challenge that we have in our industry is sometimes we are led astray by other rules that exist and other people's agendas that don't necessarily have Dean's integrity, right?
This is true.
So, you came from a bank, and the bank didn't necessarily have only the best interest of the people who were doing things in it. And you don't have to admit to that, but I have a lot of bankers that wound up on my team. Just take that as you will. And they sold products.
Yes.
Right. And at the end of the day, you got to be a fiduciary. So let's talk about this, what that means. So a fiduciary, you said, was somebody who's legally obligated to take care of your money as if it were your own and you were in the same situation.
Correct.
All right. What does suitability mean then?
Suitability means I'm going to sell a product. I'm going to make a commission. And in doing so, there can be conflicts of interest that come into being.
Now, wait a minute. Let's see. We say this all the time.
Okay.
Right. Do I have a conflict of interest? FEG manages, as of today, $650 million, the time of this recording.
Sure.
Right? I have a conflict of interest, which is why my industry gets so mad at me, right? I have a conflict of interest to not get you to spend and to get you to invest money here and not in that silly product.
Never seen you do it before.
Well, that's beside the point.
That's true.
But here's where we get into this when we have these conversations of the fiduciary and suitability. I want you guys to understand there is, I believe the certified financial planner designation is important because it's going to be really hard for somebody to pull the wool over my eyes, right? Doesn't mean I know everything. Doesn't mean that I have integrity. Doesn't mean you have character. Doesn't mean that you don't do bad things. There's CFPs, by the way, that work on suitability.
This is true.
Right? So that doesn't make you a fiduciary,
no.
Right? They are supposed to be. I mean, we have a code of ethics that we're supposed to follow, but that doesn't mean that it always happens, right? So the fiduciary rule is one thing. Suitability is another. Regardless of which side they pick, does not necessarily make them a bad person.
No.
Right? Does not make them a bad person at all. So why did we pick fiduciary? Why did we pick the RIA side and not use the products?
It gives us a freedom to move forward at any time in the investment world. We can choose the stock that will fit their model, their profile. We can have that ETF. And since we don't sell a product, that standard is never in question. We can always make the correct investment.
And we don't have guys. I mean, there are those of you that are out there that think some of the bigger firms that you know of that don't allegedly sell commissionable products are functioning as fiduciaries. Mm-hmm. And that's because a lot of people don't know where all the money comes from that companies get paid. So our contract at TD Ameritrade, it cost us $0 to make a trade. So I could buy and sell stock all day long. Contrast that with when I started 2 weeks before the crash in 1987. It was $300 to make a stock trade, right? And then it went to 30, and then it went to 7, right? And today it's 0, and yet they just built another building as they're getting ready to merge with Schwab.
Interesting.
They must be getting paid in a different way, right? So you can think that you're there not paying fees, or you can have a fiduciary whose job is to make sure that those fees are as small as possible, but appropriate when necessary. Yeah. Right? Now, let me give you a little bit of that, right? So, Dean just used an exchange-traded fund. When we use an exchange-traded fund, there is a cost inside. The cost is typically, significantly, that means a lot, less than what you would find in a mutual fund, right? But there are some ETFs that have lower fee. They have no expenses, which is why we use them. And we were one of the first to adopt them, or back in the early 2000s, by the way. When you have an ETF, you have a known fee. It may be 3 basis points, like 3% of 1%, right? It could be 15 basis points, 15% of 1%. That's what a basis point is in the financial world. But there are some times when you can pay a little bit more, right? You can pay a little bit more and get something that's different. Now, when you work with some of these companies, sometimes they're persuaded by dollars to use ones that cost more. You're not paying commissions. Oh, no. Right. You're not paying commissions, but you're paying more in terms of what we would call fees. There are times to pay them, and there's times that are not. And you may be thinking, Joe, I've got $100,000 in a 401k, or I've got $1 million in my retirement account. How big of a difference does 0.1% make? Well, the answer is over an extended period of time, it makes a lot of difference. And it certainly does when you take care of the amount of money that we do. But good deal. So now we go to the B1 that a lot of people are hearing. Tell me what that is.
SEC's ruling is B1 stands for best interest.
And what's that mean?
It means that you and I, as fiduciary financial advisors that handle people's investment accounts, must put their best interest first and foremost above our interest.
So I'm trying to figure out how to put this in terms that somebody else can understand. It's like saying I know a lot about medicine, but I'm not a doctor.
Could be.
Okay. Could you? Because the best interest is not necessarily say that you have to be a licensed fiduciary.
Correct.
It just means you're having to act in people's best interest
at that standard.
And so this was so sad. I mean, it was really, really challenging. Actually, I was actually under the Obama administration. At that point in time, they had a person who just really thought retirement accounts needed to be protected. I agree that they needed to be protected, right? They came out with a law that essentially said if you messed with IRA money or Department of Labor money, 401k, 403b, 457s, you had to be a fiduciary. You couldn't function under suitability.
Right.
And, it got struck out of the books under, the Republican Party does not believe in big government oversight. There were a lot of insurance companies that really, really got hurt because people couldn't sell policies because they couldn't be fiduciaries. There were a lot of things that happened. Perhaps it came too quick, but folks, the intent is there. And when we talk about financial independence to me is you being able to make the choice that is right for you. And there are people that are out there that want to do this on their own, right? I can't tell you, and Dean can do it, I can't tell you that I want to fix my own car because that would not be true, right? I can't tell you, however, that when I go to the drugstore, that I wouldn't be able to select the drugs that I would like to buy without the pharmacist's help, right? Now, I can tell you I've got a few pharmacists that we take care of, and I found out if I had my own ruthers, there would have been mistakes that I would have made. Hopefully I would have survived, but we don't know, because I wasn't allowed to make the mistake. What we recognize in money is people make financial mistakes all the time that they are unaware of. They get caught up in things like the graphic you're seeing if you're watching this on the YouTube channels, where we talk about financial freedom, and it doesn't necessarily mean a particular number. There's so many more things that are brought into that picture that you really have to be aware of. The tax planning, the distribution strategy that's used, the legacy planning, how the beneficiary stuff done, the gifting, and how all of it works together to create that financial independence that you're really after. And I'm going to tell you one more time, if you don't know where you're going when you're in this journey, because it is a financial journey, if you don't know the end result and you think it's a mere number, you're making a mistake. You really are. Call 800-928-4001 or go to yourlifeafterwork.com. Click on the Next Steps button. It's easy to find. Get signed up for a 90-minute complimentary meeting. Whether it's Dean or Grant or Jamie or Aaron, one of our team will sit down with you. We'll give you things you're going to want to consider today just to make sure you're on the right track. We're going to give you things you're going to want to consider in the future as your financial journey progresses. And if we choose to partner together, we'll tell you what FEG will do for you. And most importantly, we'll put it into writing. Go to yourlifeafterwork.com and click on Next Steps.